What is up? Welcome back. Truth and Transparency. It is Sunday night live. Merry Christmas. Almost Happy New Year. Welcome back after the Christmas break here. Woo. Tonight's episode, Idaho4 1112, camera at 4:29 a.m. equals the SUV parking at 1122. Let me explain this. Okay. So we want to update this timeline. It's really, really important. Do me a favor at some point. You're going to have some opinions here. So make yourself known. Thumbs up the video, thumbs down the video, share it, comments on the video, use the live chat feature. Yeah. So always have an opinion. I'm sure you have one, right? Make it known. Real quick, what'd you guys think of the 40 hours of nonstop live, 40 hours worth? Thoughts about that? I have no idea. It's still saying that it's uploading. I have no idea what's doing. I'll be contacting YouTube tomorrow to deal with that. So if you guys didn't get a chance to see it, or obviously no one probably saw all of it. Come on, 40 hours. Woo. So I guess a lot of people were coming and going. That's kind of what I did as well. I tried to say hello to as many people as I could. So, but I'll tell you this, man, oh man, does it, if you were watching at different times, it reminded us of like, oh, what about this? Oh my gosh, yeah, that. And my lives speak for themselves on everything that we've said here at this channel. Once we've got the discovery, it's it's like we had it the whole time. Okay, here we go. Now, from the discovery, two things. Ethan Chapin was driving the Explorer that night, and he picked up and drove everybody to a Hunga Dunga brewery. Ethan was the driver and was driving the Explorer. Okay. That Explorer has the two front seats, and then your second row, which is normal, and then there's a third, which would be needed for the number of people that supposedly got into that vehicle, which was 7. Okay, 7 people. You would need that back to have 2 rows of seats. All right, so the interviews took place, and this is what I want us to remember is that, first of all, Maisie said she wasn't going to be going out to the Sigma Chi party, so when they drop her off and leave, the last time that she texted with Ethan, and she said at like 8:14 that night, like, I'm not going out to Sigma Chi. She also says in her interviews that it wasn't just Ethan that was trying to get her to go out that night, but that it was, then she went to bed, and she was in bed by like 10. So she said it wasn't just Ethan that was texting her. It was also Xana and Hunter. Very, very important. So Hunter and Ethan and Xana were all texting Maisie to come out. So now, according to Bethany and Dylan had to finish a paper. So she stayed back, and she was not with when Maddie went to the Sigma Chi party with Bethany. And the question was Ethan, did he walk over with Xana or not? If you ask the people, they're going to give you yes in one breath, and then in another breath, no. That Ethan, because he was at that, the formal after he dropped off his sister, him and the people that went to Sigma Chi, whoever was with him, his brother, and whoever was still remaining in that car, they then met at Sigma Chi, which would mean that Xana, Bethany, and Maddie walked over themselves with Kaylee staying back. Dylan was finishing up a paper, and then she walked over herself. So just to remind everybody about that. Now, in interviews and in reports that Moscow Police Department would do, very little is said from Hunter Chapin and Maisie. Ready? When Hunter was interviewed by Brett Payne, he was also interviewed by Laker and then later on Joe Lake. But according to Brett Payne, Hunter said that he was with Ethan and Xana in his apartment, and it gave his apartment number, and that they were all in there at 9 p.m. And then Hunter left his apartment and went down to the lodge. And then he was at the lodge where the party was going on for about 15 minutes. Then he goes back to his apartment, which is inside, Sigma Chi, but just not where the lodge is. And when he got back to his apartment number, Ethan and Xana were gone. Okay. So he says by 9:15, Ethan and Xana were gone and left out of his apartment, and that was the last time that he saw Ethan and Xana. And then he said he went to bed at 10 p.m. So Maisie says she went to bed and that she didn't get a lot of those text messages until she woke up the next day. Majority were from Ethan, but there were some from Xana and there were some from Hunter. But those have never surfaced to know what times those were at. Maisie says she went to bed at 10. Now Hunter says he went to bed at 10. Okay. And in Maisie's interview, what's really, really important is the number one thing. Hunter Chapin, according to Maisie, and it's in, you guys can go look in the Moscow Police Department interviews. In the written report, it says that Maisie says that it was Ethan, Hunter Chapin, and Xana who were texting her to come over to Sigma Chi, which would mean that Hunter Chapin had his cell phone and it was working. This matters. So Hunter Chapin has a cell phone. It's working. According to Maisie, Maisie and Hunter both go to bed at 10 p.m., but yet Hunter is texting Maisie to come to the party. That doesn't make sense. And Hunter Chapin, the Sigma Chi people are throwing this lodge party from 9 to 1. And Hunter says that he saw Ethan and Xana. Ready? This is really, really important. Hunter Chapin is saying he was with Ethan and Xana at 9. He goes out to the lodge. He comes back within 15 minutes. Then they're gone, and he never sees them the rest of the night, and he goes to bed at 10 p.m. Okay. Well, why is this important? Well, we're going to talk about the Explorer. Okay? What this would mean is that if you put Maisie going to bed at 10 p.m. and you put Hunter going to bed, Chapin, at 10 p.m., you have, now, I've gone to college, and on a college campus where the last thing that college kids want to do is, if you can get out of walking, it's amazing. For whatever reason, like we just, oh yeah, you're going over there. Yep, we'll take a ride. So if Hunter goes to bed at 10 p.m., Maisie goes to bed at 10 p.m., but right after dropping off Maisie, everybody that was there were 7 of them in that vehicle that went to the Hunga Dunga Brewery, then they're going to Sigma Chi party. Do you think that they took the Explorer to 1122 King? Or did they take the Explorer to the Sigma Chi party? Now, at first, until we got the discovery and we got to hear exactly how this Explorer was moving, And then when we're going to start to hear about the movements of the detectives here, we're going to go with this timeline. Okay. When the cops arrive, they rope off the area, and everything's included. Just the whole parking lot area is all included in the backyard. Great. Awesome. So they take everybody's cell phones, the victims. I'm not talking about Bethany's, and I'm not talking about Dylan's. And there's very crucial steps that happen here. According to Mowry, in his report, they take all 4 victims' phones. And it was a big old hassle, and those phones were sent around all over. There's this chain of custody paperwork that I have right here. And it's at the end of the day, Mowry, now this is a really important timeline, Mowry receives the phones back because they were all extracted on 11/29. Okay. On 11/29, Mowry received the extractions from all victims' phones. Now, something that happens on that same day is on 11/29, the ECUs, which is the infotainment centers, okay, the same day. So let me explain. Mowry wants to write in a report that, hey, I just got the extractions back, but he tried to make it a point to say that I hadn't looked at them yet. And I call bullshit. I'm going to tell you why I call bullshit. Right here. Because of the timeline. As we all know, all of Moscow came back out and was like, okay, we want to know more about where Ethan and Xana were, yada, yada, yada. Okay, like where were they truly between 9 and 1, right? Or where were they, period? We have to go back. So when they would have got the phones back, so once the phones were extracted and they were done, the victim's phones, you would then have health data, which is your steps, the last phone movements for all 4 devices, as long as that portion of your phone is sharing that type of information. If you guys have seen the John O'Keefe trial, the Karen Reed trial, you guys will know exactly what I'm talking about. And then you have the flight of stairs. Now, because of the way the house is laid out, I know for a fact that if you were going to walk from the front door to go straight upstairs, that is going to register without a doubt a flight of stairs. And that would be 1 going up. When you would come down, it does not go, now it's going to mark 2. No, it's a flight of stairs. If you have an iPhone, that's what it's counting. Now, where it's going to get tricky is they would have to do a test to see, because of the way the landing is, it shouldn't affect it. But if you were to go from the 2nd floor to the 3rd floor, to make sure that it would treat that as 1 flight versus none at all, because there weren't 10 to 12 in a row. Maybe it depends on how quickly you were going, but they would have to do a little test with that. But at the very least, we're just going to focus on Ethan and Xana here, because they wouldn't need to go upstairs to the 3rd floor, because that's not where their room is. But if you walk to the front door, you're definitely going up from the basement level, or if you want to say the 1st floor, to the main floor. And that's going to be 1 flight. So on 11/29, if you would have taken just a glimpse of this to see what is the timestamp of the last movements of the phone, with steps being 1 category, and then the next category, which is a very, very important category for me and how I'm going to be doing this, which is the flight of stairs. When was Ethan / Xana's, both of them, when was their last flight of stairs? Because how it should look is, in my opinion, is that so let's walk back a little bit. Let's just hypothetically say that Xana's phone has a flight of stairs at 3:30, and then another flight of stairs at 4:04. What that would tell me is that it looks like Xana got home just before 3:30, as she's walking in the front door, and then she's going up the flight of stairs at 3:30. Then she's making movements around the house. And then, oh, look at this. They had a DoorDash, right? And now you see that there's a flight of stairs at 4:03, because she came down to get it. And then it's going to be counting it at 4:03 because of when she went back up. Not going to be counting when she comes down, when she went up. That's what you would be expecting to see. Something like that. Or it could have been Xana coming home and Ethan coming home, and they both have, now if they're together, I would expect them to be going up the stairs for the first time when they got in together, and both of their times of going up a stairs should be relatively, close with one another. So I just want to explain that that's what you'd be looking for. Now, why in the world would the FBI and Moscow Police Department be interested in getting the infotainment centers, these ECUs, out of the Wrangler, the Ford Explorer, and Maddie's car? Not, those three. Why would they be interested in doing this? And it's not of interest to them until after all of the victims' phones have been downloaded to the point that if you were to look at them, you could get some information such as your locations, your steps, all of that type of shit. Or you wouldn't be able to get that information because if you're not, if you don't have your phone settings like that, you're not able to ascertain anything because something's off, something's wrong. But if you're interested in getting the infotainment centers from the Explorer and those other in the Wrangler and Maddie's car on 11:30, which is right after you get the victims' extractions, what would that tell you? I'm going to tell you what it tells me. That there's a problem. Because it shouldn't even be like, when I say there's a problem, you need more information. It's not all clicking. And here we need to get this information, whatever it is that we're seeking, and we can get it from the cars. Well, that's going to tell me that you're trying to seek information such as what? When it was last in use. But if you were talking to people from 11:13 all the way until 11:30, thank you, and they're giving you the information such as, yeah, we went to King Road first, parked the vehicle there, okay? Think about this. I've gone through every single one of these reports. And do you know that there's not one single report that is written up talking about the whereabouts of, hey, oh, Ethan, you rode with Ethan to the party. Where'd they park were you in the Explorer? Oh, so did he park the Explorer at the Sigma Chi house? So the people that all went to the Sigma Chi party from Hunga Dunga Brewery, okay, and who's normally that person's car? Okay, it's his sister's, like she usually is the one that's driving it. Is it normal for him to take it and not like just leave it at your place and then everybody walk? Like, what was the plan? How are you going to get your car back? Okay, now why I think this is important is because we're going to get into this big chunk of time. All right. So here we go. How it should look for me to be kosher with shit is something between 2:30 and I'll just say 3. Flight of stairs. And then another one at the very least after 4 a.m. And it should be only one. Okay. So the way that I'm looking at Xana's here is that Xana's got to come home that night. And based upon what all these people were talking about in these interviews, is Xana and Ethan left the party, Sigma Chi. And the last time that we saw them there, it was like at 2 and they were in somebody's apartment. Okay. Well, guess what? That party ended at 1. That's another thing to remind everybody about is The party was only supposed to go from 9 to 1, which means you're in that lodge area. So after 1, it would be, if you're seeing Ethan and Xana, it would have been in an apartment. Okay. So I would expecting to see Ethan and Xana, or at least let's just go with Xana. Xana coming home. She goes up her flight of stairs. Then she's coming back down after 4 a.m. to get the food. Okay? Perfection. Now, if I only see that Xana has 1 flight of stairs and it is at like, let's say, 4:29 or 4:30 or 4:31, we have a big fucking problem here. How in the world, first of all, that's going to tell you that, wait, Xana was alive because her phone took a flight of stairs at 4:30? Like, wow. And it kind of like blows everything up, right? For them to be dead and killed by the time that the car is speeding away at 4:20, right? So if there's a flight of stairs, after 4:20, it's a big problem. It's a big fucking problem. Okay. Okay. Now, ooh. All right, so we're also going to learn about this battery life. What the battery life was throughout the whole entire day, if anything was being charged, when it was being charged. You're going to be able to tell all of that type of shit. Again, if you just watch the John O'Keefe trial, this is what would have been being done with these phones, or you would think. And if they weren't, I mean, they wanted to say that Karen Read was guilty of murder. Okay, guys? Because John O'Keefe's phone stopped moving at a certain time. And that was right as Karen Read is leaving. Okay? That was a big part of the case. And if you're looking at circumstantial evidence, it looked really, really good until the defense takes over and they point out that, well, we have a couple different problems here, which is when John arrives at the house, his little circumference circle of his phone, it like gets really, really close in proximity to the house because he's using a it's called Waze. It's a GPS app. So depending on what all of the victims had on their phones and what were running in the background, or maybe even just running right out there in front, if it's a GPS type of an item, which if you're using Snapchat is a GPS app. If you're using Snapchat, okay, it is GPSing you. All right, you're sharing locations in Snap. Fuck, man, you are being GPS, not just Wi-Fi. I mean, you are being literally to like a couple steps. And from my understanding, all of them were using Snapchat, right? And so depending on if they were sharing their locations, even if they were just sharing them to some friends and not everybody, then if you have Google, if you're using like a Gmail app, that's tracking you, GPS. Also, if all of these kids had their Wi-Fi password, right? So when you get close enough to the house, your phone automatically kicks on Wi-Fi. That's actually something that helped Karen Read out. In her case, thank God that she had stored in her phone. Obviously, when you're spending a lot of time with somebody and you're at their house, you're always like, oh, hey, can I get your Wi-Fi password? So you pump that in your phone. And then whenever you're at that person's house, it automatically just clicks you on and you are on their Wi-Fi. And so that could actually it helped Karen Read in that case because it had her arriving back at John's by like 12:36 a.m. And so this window of when they're trying to say that this happened, it way shrunk. And if Karen Read didn't have that to show on her phone, I think that would have been another huge hurdle. Anyways, if you guys can recall, in 19 pages of a probable cause affidavit, 19, and they wrote this up on December they wrote one up on the 23rd to get the Brian Kober's AT&T stuff, but then they wrote the one that arrested Brian Kober on the 28th, 29th, whatever date it was, to arrest him. I've never seen it where you have 19 pages and you don't refer to any of the victim's cell phone's movement / anything about a cell phone that could help the time of the crime or when that phone never moved again. For example, in the Sandra Birchmore case, okay, they covered up and tried to make it seem like that girl committed suicide. Okay. Everybody now knows, nope, it was a cop, and this is what other cops did for him. Her phone, after Farwell comes in, it never moves again. She had clothes in the dryer. She was washing clothes. And literally, you see him walk out the building. You back up the phone no time to when he first arrived. That phone was taking steps. That phone was doing text messaging, making calls. Never, nothing again. So I'm over here like, why aren't you trying to show, like, why aren't you showing that these phones stopped moving? Wouldn't that be a big thing if you truly think about it? It would be a huge thing if you could use these phones and to show that this is when they stop moving. This is when the last time they go up a flight of stairs. This is the last people they call. This is the last text message they have, that all of these calls go unanswered. You know, all of this type of shit. Because what you really want to hone in here is this, especially if you're basically asking, when it's going to come down to it, a jury, you need this time frame to be like 2 to 3 minutes that this killing happened. And if it didn't, holy shit, does your odds go so far the opposite way for it to be that it happened here at this time and it's this suspect. Because everything hinges on that car, right? So I said to myself, I'm like, man, if you're the defense, you either want to move the time of the crime up, okay? Or there is a third option here. And that would be if you can push the time of the crime to later. So, ready? We've talked about moving the time of the crime up, but is there actually a way that the time of the crime could be moved down? After listening to hearing when the dog starts barking and that the dog continues to bark all the way up and until almost 5 o'clock in the morning, versus that it'd be one thing if the dog started barking at, 4:10, 4:12, 4:08, right? But here the dog doesn't start barking until 4:19 and then continues on all the way until almost 5 o'clock. And who is the dog that's barking, right? So check this out. Now, this is going to be wild. If you are the police, there's no doubt about it. They set up a geofence. They were interested in seeing, whose phones were on and what they were doing during a radius of time. Okay. And they come back and we find out during the Molly McMichael paperwork and report that was written by, Payne and Mowry leading up to that the FBI set stuff up on the November 18th and November 20th. Okay. And you have to think about those dates because at that point in time, they have all of Linda Lane and they have all of the 1112 King Road cameras. And when I said they had them, they had them. When I said they were looking at them, they were looking at them. If you go off of Mowry's reports, it's all a bunch of lies. It's all a bunch of lies to try to hide when they truly had stuff and what they were doing and when they were looking at stuff. It's clear as day because they went and got the search warrant for Jack Showalter's bullshit. That's absolutely craziness on 11/15. Like, that's wild. And they already found the figure at 350 walking. Okay. They were fucking on that shit. Okay. So also they had the victim statements, you know, they gave them a pretty good time frame to start looking and where you want to start looking for things based off of those text messages. But now here we go. If you're interested in finding out who's coming and going around that area, then you would think that the person that would have been coming and going around 353 and 423 and 429 would be relatively important, those vehicles. So much so that I do not think the first time that you would ever interview anybody would be in February of 2022, or I'm sorry, February of 2023. Let me show you what I mean. Okay. So Wi-Fi locations or GPS locations, what are we dealing with here? Based on the apps that we're running on all of the victims' phones, you would have either really accurate information or a radius like the John O'Keefe case. And that could be like, but I'll tell you what you would also have is all of these phones should be hitting on the Wi-Fi, alerting as to when they would possibly be on it. To then, if you get off of Wi-Fi and you're just out in like your little circle is going to woo, it's going to spread you out into a radius of like, it could go as far as like, I don't know, 5 to 15 miles. I mean, just depending on a lot of things. Would all of their devices auto connect to the home Wi-Fi? I say yes. Again, they were all, that's what Mallory wanted. They were trying to get, and Blaker, hey, what's your guys' Wi-Fi password? Hey, you know? Now, Mari received the extractions from all the victims' phones on 11/29. Acted like he didn't look at them. But the ECUs start to come out of the devices on 11/29, right after getting the phones. That tells me that the phones are showing something that's problematic or that they're not giving you what you want. So on 11/29, they get Ethan's Wrangler. Then on 11/30, they go back and they get the Explorer and Maddie's white sedan. Now, just before this, a week before this, maybe 10 days, 7 days, they were saying that they were only interested in two phones that were of interest to investigators, Molly and somebody else. Okay. And I believe that somebody else was the person that was driving away, that Molly was claiming the person that she saw, but she was trying to say, no, that's actually the car. Remember that big old mess? Hold on one second. Okay. So the geofence, they're only trying to say that there was one other number that was of interest to them. You guys, we've now seen all of 1112 cams. Are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? That is like a wow to me. Okay. There would not just be two numbers. Now, Eric Grower acts like he never returns to the area, right? Well, he did. We see it. And guess what? People that were interviewed after him, they told investigators, oh, yeah, we shared the same driver as the girls. So he did go back. So why is he lying, right? But there's no follow-up after his 11/18 interview with Van Leuven that we have unless he talked to the FBI. Now, at 4:20 a.m., this car speeds off, and they're like, oh, that's suspect vehicle 1. Okay, well, I want to know what phones were being used at the time in that area around 4:20, right before it and right after that time frame, because that should be important. That's what investigators should have been doing, right? So why are you only of interest, think about this, of Molly at 4? Coming there at 3:45. Why would that be of interest to you? After what you know or that you claim to know, okay? Mr. Eric Gower here after what you claim to have now know based off of Dylan and Bethany, why in the world is Molly's phone of interest to you being there from 3:45 until 4? It comes and it leaves. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. Why, like, it doesn't make any sense. If a phone came, not a car, but if a phone came in the area at 3:45, because you did from 3 to 5, 3:45, and then leaves the area at 4. Because remember what they told her? It was your phone in this geofence, and we wanted to talk to whoever this belonged to. What? You don't want to talk to any of the roommates just coming and going from the house right next door? And then all the houses that, like, all the comings and the goings of all the people that live, like, literally chain link fences are right up to that house. Makes no sense. Next. Okay, 4:23 a.m. Remember, Dylan says that she saw a vehicle just like sitting there with its running lights on. Well, this 4:23 a.m. vehicle, it leaves and pulls out of a parking spot at Linda Lane, which it's on camera, which they would have known like that. Like, they would have known it on 11:15, on 11:16, on 11:17. Okay. Like that. They would have also known that this vehicle could not have been a car that just came there, checked on cats, got back in, and left, because this car was there before midnight. Because we have the cameras all the way back to midnight, and that vehicle, that's SUV, is at Linda Lane in a parking spot that pulls out at 4:23. That car had been there before midnight. So here they allow Gower to lie, don't care about that he comes back to the area or anything that he's doing. Then the cops have to have it. They're like, we need to have an answer for this vehicle at 4:23. My thing is why? Why do you need an answer for that? Well, because they're like, we need to know who's leaving the area at 4:23. But why? And then if you think that you need that answer, then why in the world are you settling for the most ridiculous answer that you could ever come up with, which is, we're going to say that it's this woman who works from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. and that she came home to check on her cats and then left and returned back to work and then came back. Yeah, that absolutely makes no sense because it didn't happen. And this girl was never shown. Like, she normally doesn't park there. So that's another person just with like the Gower. And then here we go to 4:29. But what about the 4:29 vehicle arriving into the neighborhood? Well, how important would that vehicle be to you? Well, I don't think it would be important at all. Right? Based off of, if you think about this shouldn't be important at all. If you're saying, think about it. If you're saying that the killer is in the car at 4:20 speeding away and it's your crime occurred within a 2.5 minute time span, and it was for 416 to 420. Okay. Well, ready for this? On November 21st, we all remember, holy shit, why did Gilbertson and Payne and whoever else was there and the people from Idaho State Police go to the house and want to time this killing? Wow, we need it. Why? What? Basically, why couldn't the killer have left in the 423 car? Or why couldn't the killer have left in the there's a bunch of vehicles that leave. Why couldn't the killer be on foot? On 11/21, they were determined that that vehicle speeding away at 420 in 42 seconds, that had to be right. Okay. So they said, yep, this could have happened. And then a month after that, they decide, okay, we need to bring out a dog and we need to install the camera again over there at 1112 King Road. And we're going to have to do some tests of a dog barking with a canine dog. We're going to do some tests with a vehicle's trunk closing and car door closings, and to hear what this sounds like. Wow, okay. Awesome. Perfect. Well, and in between all of that, in between all of that, they determined we need to have an answer for the 429 car that's coming into King Road. So much so that, poof, there's a tip that's sent through the tip line of the 3195 tip. And the 3195 tip that I just talked about all of a sudden just shows up here. Go and talk to this guy. 3195, 3,195. That's like a lot of tips before. 3,195. Okay. And it's a guy that's saying, oh, I was playing video games at my fraternity house, and then I left and I came home, and I got home around 4:30, and I parked right next to the house on that side street there. And then I go into my apartment, and then I take my dog out around 4:50, and then I come back in my house, and then somebody's tapping on my window. Okay, that's the 429 car coming in. The 429 car coming in, they're assigning to this kid. Now, ready for this? This kid who was at his fraternity house. And he's like, I then drove back to the area, and okay, well, what's the geofence look like? That means that there would be a number that's coming into the area, right? Around that time, right? And so you would have that in your geofence, and wouldn't you be contacting that person? If you're the police, why is that person writing in a tip and it coming over the tip line somehow? This is the one that we're trying to get our hands on, because there's no report and it doesn't surface in anything until February of 2023, February 7th, that they talked to this kid and they've determined that the 429 vehicle is this kid's vehicle coming back from his fraternity. Ready? No, it's not. Let me use. Okay. Speaking of which, me, how right, you're going to be doing a lot on December 31st to close out 2025. Go. I'm going to pull up something. Jeez. Okay, here we go. I think this is the one I wanted to show you. Oh, no, wrong one. Okay. Okay. This is the one I want to show you. Okay.
And by the way, I want to say thank you to Gray Hughes. I was watching his video the other night, and Gray actually explained how to. So now, comes walking past 1112, and nobody's home yet. And then he's going to continue. When we hear those pipes go past 1320 Linda Lane right here on its way 112 right here. Walk 315. Check this dumpster because he just checked the other one.
Oh, this isn't the one I wanted. Hold on one second. I just want the lightings. I just want to show you guys the lightings of something because this is what Mark and I have been working on as well. And I'm like, hold on one second. That's just not the one I want to use. It was, wait, there we go. I had wrote on and everything. I was like, yo. I just want to show you guys the 420 for 429. Oh hell, which one is it now? There it is, the black Ford Explorer. Thank you.
Area, and you turn right here.
Okay, so here, this is all I want to focus on.
This line, 1, 2. Now, he was so emphatic on this.
Okay, so 429 in 8 seconds here. Remember, this is all we had to work with before was like, we only have Linda Lane, we didn't have 112 yet. And so back in the day,
So naturally, when they released the 1112 King Road footage, the first vehicle that I really wanted to get a look at was what he thought was that big black rumbly bumbly truck.
Okay. And so he does a really good job right here with this pause. Like I said, give kudos to Pav, to Mark, and I think, over here as well with getting this timeline down and using all the different interviews that have taken place during the course of this investigation, because something that should have really stuck out to these investigators was, okay, why does Ethan have every family vehicle at the house? Right? They're triplets, okay? And Ethan's brother saying he went to bed at 10. More importantly, Ethan's brother then says he doesn't have his phone the next morning. It doesn't work. It's not working. Well, according to his sister, it was working perfectly fine that night when she was getting text messages from him. And if you don't believe me, it's right there in the interview that she claims that it was Xana, Ethan, and Hunter Chapin all texting to come to that party. And then Hunter Chapin says that I saw Ethan and Xana at 9. Then I go to the lodge. I come back at 9:15 to my apartment. They're not there. And I don't see them the rest of the night. Because then he says, because I went to bed at 2200 hours, which is 10 p.m. And I'm like, damn, 10 p.m. How'd your phone get fucked up then between, I don't know, 9, whatever time the last time you texted your sister, right? But he didn't have his phone. His phone wasn't working. This is really, really important. His phone was not working. And I'm like, that's weird. His sister goes to bed. He goes to bed. And then his friend is shaking him to wake up in the morning. And they walk over. And remember, he has to then use Hunter Johnson's cell phone to call his sister. And she's in the shower. And when she gets out of the shower, she saw that Hunter Johnson called. She's like, whatever. Then that number calls again. And she's like, what do you want, Hunter? And it was like, no, hey, it's me, your brother. Okay. So somebody in that group would have had, who's the person? Now remember, the only person that's ever said in an interview to date, oh, you know what car was there? I remember that car that was on a tilt, on a slant. You know who said that? Eric Gower. Eric Gower says, oh yeah, there was like, I don't know, like 4 cars there. I remember that car. Dude, this would have been after you saw pictures and videos of that house all over the news before you gave your, interview. So you can just take that and throw that out. Because at first, that was really important to hear. But the weight now of it is, it goes out the window. Why is that important? Because if Eric says that he saw that car there, that was the Explorer on the slant, that would put the car there earlier, like at 1:52, right? 1:56. Well, bye-bye. That has no credit, no weight with me now. Here at 4:29. Check this out.
Because according to him, it pulled into the King Road residence parking lot and never left. And then when I finally got the video showing the actual vehicle pulling into the King Road neighborhood, and I realized, well, that's not a black rumbly bumbly truck. That is a black sport utility. And it sure looks similar to the one that's sitting in the King Road parking lot when the authorities arrive. And that's odd. And then I began to really decipher the video, as you know. So I took the DoorDash, who I knew was coming down between King and Queen, turning.
So Mark has done a bunch of stuff like this with the videos using the headlights. Okay. And so all I wanted is to be able to say, can we say that this vehicle did not park on that side street? That's all that matters. Because if you can say that, then you can go ahead and make an argument that Ethan, okay, ready? This is the argument. The argument is needed, which is that Ethan and Xana did not get home until 4:29 a.m., which means they can't be dead yet. You understand? That's how I would argue this as a defense attorney. I would argue it this way. Even if it's not the right way, how you can argue it is that Ethan and Xana didn't get home until 4:29. So who gives a fuck about any of these cars doing anything? So, because just think about it. It can't be who? How many? Ready? It can't be Maisie. She went to bed, right? Her first statement. She was in bed. She didn't have the car. Ethan was driving in, and everybody piled back in and left and went to the Sigma Chi party. Okay? Number one. Number two, Hunter says he went to bed. Hunter says he went to bed, right? Hunter went to bed at 10 o'clock. He didn't see Ethan and Xana after 9 o'clock. Well, ready? Again, why would you ever go get the infotainment centers out of these vehicles? Why would that matter? Well, because something in the phones aren't adding up, right? You get the phones back on 11/29. Then on the same day, we're going to go for the infotainment centers on 11/29, 11/30. Okay? Now hang tight.
Left onto Queen, and I could see its headlights in those windows as it came down and made the turn and then headed out of the neighborhood. I studied the suspect vehicle because I knew it did the same thing. I studied every vehicle that came in and out of that neighborhood. And y'all know that I came to some determinations that goes out this way by looking at this window in this house. You can literally see when a vehicle is driving up, what happens to it? Does it turn in here? Does it keep going straight? Or does it turn in between King and Queen? And what I determined was there is a line, an imaginary line in the road right here. If a vehicle comes up and it stays as far to the left as possible where it doesn't hit this trash can, then it can almost bypass the reflection in this window, almost, but you always see just a glimpse of it in the middle windows, and then you can see it clearly in the upper windows. But if a vehicle gets to the right of this line, once it hits this point right here, especially if it turns in, you can clearly see it in these windows. And I had this as my area of proof if a vehicle turned or if it went straight. Now, if a vehicle continues straight and doesn't turn in here, there was my other line, which is right here. And this is where you can see if a vehicle continued straight because you see it in the upper window.
Okay, so remember this 429 vehicle. The police were like, we need it to belong to somebody just like the 423 vehicle. Why? Okay. Why? Why did we have to have why did the police feel like they needed to have an answer for this? If the killing's already done and over with, what the fuck does the 429 vehicle have anything to do with anything? Think about it. It wouldn't. It shouldn't. But they felt, hey, we need to have an answer for this. And it's this kid coming home who says, I came home and I parked right next on the side road right here. Okay. And in order for that to happen, your vehicle has to make that right-hand turn and it's going to be seen because of the headlights. Okay.
There's 3 sets of windows. The bottom one is in between. So if a vehicle does not turn here or pull in here, you'll see its taillights in the window up here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this was the way that I determined this. Once again, I'm pretty sharp at this stuff, but I hypothesized that it just pulled right in here and it never left. Therefore, the black Ford Explorer is the vehicle that pulls in at 429 and it never leaves. And you see it there the next morning.
Right there. Okay.
So once again, pay close attention. Is this black Ford Explorer pulls in at 429 and it drives past 1112 King. We see in these windows up here, nothing.
Nothing.
Don't see anything. Nothing. I have now listened to, drives past 1112 King. We see in these windows up here, nothing. We don't see anything. Nothing. I have now listened to every bit of the footage that has been released for hours upon hours, and I've stared at these windows, and that vehicle never appears in those windows. And I'm about to prove to you it's impossible for it to not appear in those windows if it goes past King Road. But first, let's stop this one right in its tracks, because this is a vehicle that pulls through at 226. And I've heard content creators try to hypothesize that this was the black Ford Explorer, and maybe it was pulling into the King Road driveway. However, they haven't studied these windows very well, because as you can see up here, it is clearly going up past the Queen Road apartments because we can see its taillights. Sorry, it wasn't that one. Other creators, due to a police report of someone saying that they pulled through at that time and parked in between King and Queen, have contemplated that maybe it was this black sport utility that's
the only one that it could be if that kid, if it's being honest. You know what I mean? That's the only one that I thought it could be. I came out and I was like, hey, when you guys read this report, this tip 3,195, they got some kid to say that he came home from playing video games and that he parked his vehicle right up alongside this street, right up alongside the house, got out, got into his apartment, and then got his dog and went and took his dog out to go use the bathroom at like 4:50 in the morning. They used this kid to explain two things, which was this 429 vehicle and why you hear multiple dogs barking at 4:50 right before it. It's multiple dogs barking. I think it's 3. Okay. Now, this should be something that like, this shouldn't even be an issue. The phone data should be so indicative of that this vehicle and everything happened. Like, who cares whose car this is? But the cops do. Why? Well, because the cops are they know something and they're not saying what they know. But they're like, we can just explain this away. Let's see how we can explain this away. Explain what away?
you can't see real well in this photo, but it's right here parked, and it looks similar to the Ford Explorer. However, I'm going to prove that it can't be that one. Oh, they used to be Blazers. So I always call them Blazers.
So that's
but it could
a good
be
angle. When I
this Chevy Tahoe that was parked right here. 9.9999999%.
Okay, right here. See on these Explorers, see how the light goes up onto the right-hand side of the car and it extends? That is huge. It's really, really important. Huge for when that car is actually pulling into, because you can see it. It extends it. If you can see, you can see it on the side.
That is this one. Now, I literally thought that I was going to have to go to Moscow, Idaho, talk to people that live into 1112 into letting me put a Ring camera in their lights.
Okay, so listen to this. They did all these tests. They wanted to hear the dog barking. They wanted to hear the closing and opening of trunk doors, car doors. Why wouldn't they do a test at nighttime to see how the reflecting lights would be? Think about this. The only test that they didn't fucking do is the test to see pulling past, right? And making the right or going straight, or, you know, they want to use the lights off of the houses, right? Well, they only want to use them when it's like going like towards the house, not away from the house. Why?
Pocket aimed at this house, and then simultaneously put another camera here aimed this way, and then drive a vehicle up and see when the because I knew to an extent. This is the landing area right here, between here and here. If you get to the left of this line and you continue straight, you'll still see a little glimpse of the tail light, but you'll absolutely see it once you get past this line. But if you cross this black line between this area and this area, and you turn right here, it's impossible for you not to be seen in the windows of this house. And that,
let me show you why. It's because it's where that window is, where the house is that has the light or has the camera. Between the cars on the street and where the house is, you see that open area? That's that little peek through. Okay. That's that little area that's allowing your car, when you make that right, to be caught because it illuminates. It's illuminating a dark area. And so it illuminates. Now, if the house, let's say, was all the way up to like the curb of the road and the cars like that, you wouldn't be able to see it then, even if it did turn. But because of where the house is situated and you have that little gap, you're able to see it. So if you can see on that window the light, that means it turned right. If you can't see anything, that means it turned before it, because it's on the right-hand side here and it's going into the driveway.
that includes pulling out of this driveway. When you come up this road and you pull in this driveway, you will not be seen in these windows right here as far as a reflection. But if you come up this road and you turn in this driveway and then you back up and you pull out, you absolutely will be seen in this window.
Okay, now I want you to think about something. Now, this 429 car, in my opinion, 1000% pulls into the driveway. And now we have one of the owners of that vehicle is dead. Okay. And the other people that basically own it and drive it and have the ability to have a key, they both said they went to bed at 10 p.m. So hold on, let's back up. Idaho is telling us one of the owners out of the three that have a key and can drive that vehicle was dead before 420 or by 420. And the other two were sleeping by 10. With the one person waking up to, oh, my phone doesn't work. Wow. Okay. So, well, then who's driving this car at 429? Who's driving the SUV at 429?
Across this plane, and we now have proof. It's 1:55. Here's Eric Gower pulling in with Kaylee and Maddie, driving past 1112. Look at the middle windows.
See that right there? It says Eric Gower.
Past 1112. Look at the middle windows.
When you get all the way over to the right and you turn into the driveway, you can't see any. There's no lights.
We know he pulled in the driveway
because the car didn't continue on driving, and because it got over on the right hand side to turn into, and basically it made all the lights disappear.
Backs up. And as he pulls out, the proof is in the pudding. There is no way to make it past these windows without your lights appearing in them. If you turn in between King and Queen, that black Ford Explorer never made it past. And there he is pulling out of the driveway. And that is the final proof that I needed right there. Now, all I got to say is, Mr. G, it is a well-known fact that the plea deal for Brian Kohberger was not something that you agreed with. And it's also a well-known fact that there was animosity between you and that family of a black rumbly bumbly truck in the King Road parking lot when the authorities arrive. And that's odd. And then I began to really decipher the video, as you know. So I took the DoorDash and I could see its headlights in those windows as it came down and made the turn and then headed out of the neighborhood. I studied suspect vehicle because I knew it did determinations. So in this King and Queen. And what I determined was that in the of proof, if it is right here, and this is where you can see it is immaterial. Look, therefore, the black Ford Explorer. So, and it drives past 1112 King. We see in these windows up here, nothing.
Nothing.
We don't see anything. Nothing.
Just like what Eric Gowers did. Nothing, because he turned into the driveway. Just like the 429 vehicle did. It turned into the driveway. So again, ready? What this means, Eric Gower tells us he's dropping off the girls. Yeah. You pulled into that. When you dropped off those girls, you pulled off to the side, you pulled in, let them out, then you back out, do like a 3-point kind of turn, and then you drive off and go, and then you leave. At 429, this vehicle pulls into the driveway. Okay, so now with this being said, I want you guys to now think about all of this. Let me grab one thing. Okay. Brett Payne's report 111, so 111. On November 13th, 2022, at approximately 2:20, I interviewed Maisie Chapin at the Moscow Police Department. Referenced the quadruple homicides at 1122 King Road. Maisie is Ethan Chapin's, triplet. Maisie consented to a forensic search of her phone, and I collected it from her. Maisie turns over her phone. Hunter Chapin did not have a phone. Yet, please listen. I asked Maisie to tell me what her day looked like on November 12th. Maisie stated that she had her formal that night. It was at Hungadunga Brewery. Maisie stated that she did not do much prior to the formal and then went to Hungadunga for the event at approximately 7. Maisie said that she, her brother Hunter Chapin, and Ethan Chapin left the formal with several other friends at approximately 8. Maisie stated that she was dropped off at her house as the group was planning to go to the Sigma Chi Lodge party. However, Maisie stated that she did not go and remained at her sorority until Hunter called her the morning of November 13th, 2022 at approximately 12:30. Maisie stated that Hunter told her to come to Xana's. When he called her, Maisie said that Hunter did not elaborate on why she needed to come to the house. Maisie stated that Hunter Johnson, Hunter Chapin, Emily Allant, Josie, and she couldn't know her last name, and Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen were all there when she arrived at 12:30. Maisie said someone told her when she got there that someone was in the house and that Ethan and Xana didn't make it. Maisie told me that Ethan, Xana, and Hunter had been texting her the night prior, asking her to come to the Sigma Chi party. And that is so important. Why? Because Hunter Chapin had a cell phone that night and was using it. And his sister said, yeah, he was texting me. That means Hunter was texting me, telling me to come to the party, just like Ethan and Xana were, right? It means his phone was working. I'm telling you to come to a party around what? 9:30, only for me to say, fuck this, I'm going to bed at 10 if I'm Hunter Chapin. Also, Hunter Chapin tells the police, I did not see my brother and Xana after they were in my room at 9. We were all in my room at 9 in my apartment. And then I go out to the lodge area where the party is about to start and happen. I come back to my apartment at 9:15 and they're gone. They're not there. I don't see them the rest of the night. And then I go to bed at 10. Maisie said that she saw the text once she woke up the morning of November 13th. Maisie said that she did not go into the house that morning. Now, Hunter Chapin. On November 13th, 2022, at around 2:19, Dustin Blaker. So Dustin Blaker takes Hunter Chapin, and then Payne takes Maisie at the same time. Okay? So at 2:19, Dustin Blaker begins to interview Hunter Chapin. At 2:20, so at the same time, Payne then begins to interview Maisie. Okay? So at the same time. Hunter is a student at the University of Idaho and is a member of the Sigma Chi fraternity. Hunter lives at the fraternity. Hunter told me that he and Ethan went to a formal dinner with their sister. Maisie is a member of the blank sorority. The formal was at around 6 at Hungadunga Brewery. After the formal was over, they went back to blank, which was her sorority. But it says blank, so we don't know. Okay, so after the formal was over, they went back to blank. Ethan, Xana, and Hunter were all hanging out in his apartment room at the blank fraternity. And then that's when I realized, I said, oh, wait, back it all up. Back it up. So the part that doesn't come out, at least in this report, is how they dropped off Maisie. Okay. So ready? So Hunter's just like, yep, after the Hungadunga Brewery, after the formal was over, they went back to Sigma Chi. Ethan, Xana, and Hunter were all hanging out in his apartment room at the Sigma Chi fraternity. Hunter last saw Ethan and Xana at 9. 9. When he left his apartment to go up to the main lodge where the house party was at. Hunter returned at 9:15, and Ethan and Xana were gone. Hunter Chapin stated he went to bed at around 10 p.m. Why this all matters. 429 vehicle is, in my opinion, you'd be able to have an expert argue that vehicle 1000%, you would show the difference of a car turning and what it would look like, and then you would show when a car is going into the driveway area and what it looked like. Okay, you would show the jury all of that with an expert and show why there is the lights lighting up like that and yada yada yada. And hey, did the detectives, so they're using the light fixtures, right? Did they ever test to say, okay, this 429 car, and you're going to find out, why were you interested in the 429 car? Why were you ever interested in it? Why would that be important? Everybody's already dead. Suspect vehicle 1 flew away at 420. Why are you needing to claim ownership of this 429 car? Well, because we cannot have it be the SUV. Understand? Period. The SUV that comes in at 429, it cannot be the Explorer. Now, so here's your options. This is how I see them. These are your options, how I see them. Ethan and Xana are in that Explorer and are arriving at 429. Okay. And which would then make it on their phones, you'd be able to see that. And if they're arriving at 429, then they can't be dead yet. Okay. And that's how you can argue it. Okay. And how I've even seen it argued before in the Karen Reed case is they were adamant to say, well, John's phone never moved again. And so he's dead, Okay. Well, I can argue it to say that if those phones were left at the house on purpose, I don't know what these phones show, but I can promise you, I believe wholeheartedly that if they went to get the infotainment centers out of these vehicles, that those phones were not indicative and they were presenting a problem. Okay. Also, if either one of those phones are going up a flight of stairs, and if they both are, meaning Ethan and Xana's phones are going up a flight of stairs at around 429, 430, what does that look like? It is a pretty clever argument, isn't it? It's a very clever argument. That's how you would argue it, though. That's how I would argue it. If I saw the data and I could argue it that way, that's how I would argue it. Now, what that would also mean is, check it out, ready? Okay. If Ethan and Xana are coming home at 4:29, right? And they walk in on something. Okay, I have no idea, not a clue, but I'm just saying when you want to talk about people that are, you know, why would so and so be killed? Like, why wouldn't all of them have been killed? You know, after going just upstairs and killing Maddie and Kaylee, and one of them probably not because you meant to, but because they were in the same room or because one of them came in, regardless, right? Then you are leaving. But you cannot sit here and tell me that if you believe that Dylan saw the masked man and the masked man saw Dylan wouldn't be here. And I think what supports that argument is that's why Ethan and Xana aren't here, right? But what never made any sense to me is that there was no evidence of that an attack started upstairs on the third floor or in the stairwell, right? And remember, Gilbertson was asked, and the evidence of something like this would be, well, is there flights of stairs, going up a flight of stairs? Like, what is there any digital evidence of that? Is there any biological evidence of it? Okay, so then why would the killer go off and into Xana's room? If and they're like, well, the killer would have had to run into them. Okay, well, awesome. Sounds good. Where? When? Because ready for my argument is that if it happened, if you ran into somebody, because you're about to leave out the kitchen, and let's say Xana was in the kitchen returning the food or something like that, well, how is Xana's going to run towards the person that would be coming like this way from coming downstairs, going out the door, and you're in the kitchen, you're going to run towards that person. You'd be running like away and almost like out the slider because like you couldn't like, you're going to run towards that person. That never made sense to me to like, if that's where it happened. Also, what didn't make sense to me is that, if Xana had left the kitchen and was already like leaving the kitchen to like what they actually like physically like ran into each other, you know? But again, there's no evidence, biological evidence that anything took place anywhere other than those two rooms with those two sets of people. Now, here's your next argument. The police had an answer for the 423 car, and now the police have an answer for the 429 car. Both of which were not needed, and both of which are completely fucking crazy. Okay, they're wrong. It's like, and when the police go out of their way and don't show their work, and then poof, just randomly, oh, this tip came in, and then, oh, poof, this SUV. All right, well, let's say that it wasn't Ethan and it wasn't Xana, and let's say that they're deceased and this 429 vehicle, that's the SUV, the Explorer, pulls in. Okay, pulls in. Well, then you only have one other option, which would be that this person in this vehicle came there for what, a booty call? And that could only be like, okay, Hunter Chapin came there for a booty call, but that would be Hunter and let's say Bethany on the first floor. Just hear me out. And then what? But he's coming over, and Dylan's in the bed too? No. Right? Like, I mean, or hey, Bethany and Dylan are like, hey, let's reach out to who? Hunter Chapin. Hey, you need to come over here. I don't know what's going on, but something's wrong. And then Hunter Chapin realizes that, okay, I go over there, I drive this vehicle that was left at Sigma and I come over there and I bring the vehicle there, and then what? I get rid of my cell phone. And I don't call 911 to help to like do anything. And then you go back to the timeline. And timelines are so important. And I said, wow, what are the odds that Hunter Chapin's phone all of a sudden just doesn't work? This SUV that he'd have been able to drive pulls into a driveway at 429. Both him and his sister are like, we went to bed at 10, but Hunter's supposedly texting his sister to say, come to the party, but he's just going to go to bed at 10. And they both just go to bed at 10. And Hunter says, I saw my brother and and Xana at 9. I left my room. I come back to my room. They're gone. I don't see them again. Because I get back to my room at 9:15. I don't see them again. And I go to bed at 10. And the cops never once say, hey, they got Maisie's phone, right? And Hunter Chapin's like, yeah, my phone's not working. Well, guys, there'd be so many times that my phone just all of a sudden wouldn't work. Okay. And maybe I dropped it in some water or something like that. And I'd put it in rice or whatever. But I can promise you this. I can't recall ever my phone being like all even screwed up and not working properly that I've ever just left it. I've always brought it. Like, because, okay, let me see if I can get this to work, or like I'll shut it off, turn it back on. But it's almost out of habit too that you would grab it. And because there's numerous reasons that what do you mean your phone's not working? Is it not turning on? Is it like, what's the issue? What was the issue? And to this day, we have no idea what happened with his cell phone. Also, what about this? Maybe somebody slipped something into Hunter Chapin's drink to make him pass out, you know, like it's like the date rape drug, but like, let's do that so that he'll be all groggy. We'll put him to sleep. Okay. And then we fuck his phone up, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying there's anything sinister with Hunter or Maisie, but it seems like they were sidelined in very weird ways on the night that their brother would be killed. So I wouldn't be looking at it like that Ethan's brother is hiding something. I'd be looking at it like we're cops and we know how things can operate and happen. So maybe something happened to this kid. And then his sister, they're both going to bed, but yet just a couple minutes ago, they're all texting Maisie to come to the party. And wait, was your plan to go to you guys were throwing the party, Hunter Chapin. So was it your plan to like attend it and like, you know? And then the other question is when you were interviewing any of these other people, were any of them talking about the fact that, hey, I was hanging out with Hunter Chapin that night? I find it hard to believe that Ethan's in that fraternity from 9 to 1 or 2, and he doesn't run into his brother, doesn't think, hey, where's my brother at? He's texting Hunter Johnson saying, hey, are you coming to this party or whatever? I mean, what are Ethan's text messages look like? Is he saying to anybody, oh my God, my freaking brother is a lightweight, or he passed out, or, I mean, he's calling at an early night. Like, that has never been talked about. These two big, what makes it huge here is this 429 SUV. Because if it's not Ethan and Xana driving it, okay? If it's not Ethan and Xana driving it, or could it be, you can think about it, could be somebody else that's like, hey, we need to go get that SUV and put it back over there at King, after the fact. Well, who would have keys to that? Where was on the key left? How many keys were there to the Explorer? Where were those keys located then next morning? Who had them? Things like that. But nobody thinks that it's odd that Hunter Chapin's phone is not working the next morning. Okay. The cops try to cover up whose vehicle this is at 429 and assign it to some frat kid that's coming home from playing video games at his fraternity house that he parked then right up along the side of the house. It's like they knew that they had to account for this 429 car. Well, why? Okay. And did Ann Taylor, I mean, was there a way to, I'm guessing that there was a way to argue this, because the prosecution does not use anybody's phone to say when it stopped moving as to corroborate the time that the crime occurred. You would strongly be able, it's circumstantial, like, hey, this person has their phone with them all the time. And if you can tell that this person walked down to the stairs, picked up their food, walked back up, that's a flight of stairs. And if you're saying that were there a bunch of them at like 3:45 to like 4 on Xana's phone because she's going up and down the stairs, because she's like, hey, where's this Molly broad with my food? Like, what is this woman doing? Their phone should tell us significantly what's going on as far as steps and flights of stairs. And on the same day they get the phones back, they're like, Maury, act like you didn't look at the items yet because we're going to go and get the infotainment centers. Hunter stated that he went to bed at around 10. But yet he was telling his sister to come to the party. So this vehicle is, in my opinion, the SUV at 429. And so if it's not Ethan and Xana driving and in that vehicle, who's in that vehicle? And then are you able to attribute, because now can you work backwards and say, okay, what vehicles do we have leaving that it could have ever been that the SUV was at the house, left at some point from the camera angles that we have right now, and then is returning here at 429. And if it's not Ethan, and it's not Xana, and if it's not Maisie, and if it's not Hunter Chapin, then who's driving that car? And how come it would not be ever anywhere that it would be asked? There's no reports as to why these officers and FBI agents are interested in getting the infotainment centers, because they supposedly have everybody accounted for at home. Remember, they said everybody was at home by 2 and in their rooms by 4. What? Okay, well, how do you figure? You guys, you would never need to say that in a probable cause. You just would use the phone data. You would use the phone data to say that Kaylee never, Kaylee was taking steps, making phone calls, and then her phone stops doing anything at this time. Did her phone battery die? Because remember, her mom's like, I called and it just went straight to voicemail. Okay. So you're going to be able to tell from the knowledge C if the phone died, what the battery level was at all the way down. Then you're going to be able to tell the same thing with Maddie. And then you get to the, Ethan and Xana. And when you get to Ethan and Xana's, what do their phones look like? Okay. Why is everybody talking about the fact that Ethan and Xana were not on Snapchat location that night? And they normally are. That means you purposely did not. That means if you're normally like that, and she's also sharing locations with Bethany and Dylan because Bethany said that the day before she used Find My Friends. Okay. So if you've disabled your locations, you'd want to look and see when. That's something that Brian Drake would do, and he would do it often, and he would do it when he was always going up to Bonner's Ferry and when he was in Sandpoint. Okay. So whatever the fuck he was doing when he would go on those trips, he didn't want anybody to know where he was. Okay. The last time I checked, why would their phone locations be off if it's normally being shared and then all of a sudden we're going to shut off our location services? That makes no sense. None. Unless you're turning it off because of where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And in this case, they did not employ the services of like Cellbrite or any expert to work on and look at any of the victims or the survivors' phones. Go back and listen to what the Cellbrite experts talked about. They were brought in on this case, and they were given a Brian Kohlberger's phone and everything to do with his device. Bethany Funk said that she was using her iPad to watch that Baby Daddy show. Okay. Well, was that iPad downloaded? Then I'll leave you guys with this last special token. On 11/29, they get the phones back, and then 11/29 and 11/30, they're taking the infotainment centers out, and then they ship them to Salt Lake City. And then on 12/22, Dustin Blaker writes up a report, on January 10th, and he says, and he explains this whole thing with this infotainment centers. And he says, okay. Well, there we go. I'm sorry. He says it on January 4th. He writes up the report. He says, on November 29th, I was tasked with having 5 vehicles from 1122 King Road moved to the city shop. Okay. On 11/29, I met with first name starts with a D and last name starts with an A, and it's an FBI DFE agent out of Salt Lake City. Well, I went and looked at Ann Taylor's witness list. Okay. And I could not find anybody with again, if this is first name and last name in this order, I could not find anybody that began with the first name of D and ended with an A. And what I think would be important, And it says, and I assisted agent, whatever his last name is with an A, with removing the ECU from the Jeep Wrangler belonging to Ethan Chapin, right? After the ECU was removed, I took possession of it and booked it into property, and it became number 272. Then, on 11:30, the next day, Blaker feels the need that he's going to write this report and add in on 11:30, Officer Aaron Morris was with Agent A when he removed the ECUs from a Ford Explorer belonging to Ethan Chapin and a Chevrolet Cruze belonging to Madison. Officer Morris took possession of the ECUs, and I assisted him with booking them into property. Well, where's Officer Morris's report? It's not there. The ECUs were then shipped to Salt Lake City so the FBI could retrieve data from them. Why? For what? Once they were done, they shipped the ECUs back to the PD. This is Blaker. Blaker says, so he doesn't give us the name of who. So he just tells us, hey, this guy from Salt Lake City. Now, mind you, there's all those people that are on site. Okay. Hey, this guy from Salt Lake City, he's here. His name is Agent whatever with an A. We assisted him and Aaron Moore. So to preserve chain of custody, we took them out, we booked them into evidence. And that's where they became 272, 273, and 274. We do it on 11:29 and then 11:30. Okay. Then after we booked them into evidence, there would then be somebody checking them out. If you're going to give them to the FBI, you then have to check it out. Okay. And so there's no date on when they were checked out and by whom or anything like that. It just says that the ECUs were then shipped to Salt Lake City. No date, no person responsible for it, who shipped it, what was, who's it being shipped to, no attention to who, none of that. Then Blaker says, I received a large package around December 22nd. What? I received a large package around December 22nd. Now, this is where it gets interesting. On December 23rd, that's when they put in for the warrant for Brian for his AT&T stuff. Ready? This package was not opened up until 12/27/2022. He's like, oh, I got this package on the 22nd, around the 22nd, but I didn't open it up. I didn't open it up until the 27th. I'm like, think about that. Why? You see that the FBI sent you something and you're not opening it up? And I said to myself, why the fuck wouldn't you? Oh, well, you have no idea what's in it, right? And it could potentially, if you know of something that could go into that warrant that would actually, I don't know, we shouldn't be getting this, or fuck, I don't know. So, hey, hold off on opening that. Don't open that up, Blaker. So he opens it up on 12/27, and he found 3 ECUs in the box. We were told Agent A would not be able to come back to Moscow for several weeks to reinstall the ECUs. He doesn't say anything about the extraction. Hey, we're sending you back the ECUs, right? What's the information that you pulled on this? What's the data? Where's the data? And so all he says is, how did you know that who did you talk to when you got this package? When it says we were told Agent A would not be able to come back to Moscow for several weeks, who's we were told? Who did you talk to? Who told you this? And why are you writing this in a report like this? Did you do it? Do you know it? No. So the fuck are you doing? I contacted KR, he says, the fleet supervisor. I asked this person if he and his mechanics could reinstall the ECUs, and he told me he could. I provided him with the ECUs, and they had them installed the same day. What about the information? Where is the ECUs? Where's the information? You understand when we were just talking about this because we were just traveling, you guys. Do you know how invasive CarPlay is? Do you know how crazy it is? That Explorer, if you plug your phone in, it has Wi-Fi and all that shit. You have a cord and you plug it in because you want to charge your phone. If you have an iPhone, it's going to immediately ask you if you want to basically download your whole entire phone into that infotainment center. If you want your music to play through the Bluetooth speakers, let me tell you what it will do. It not only, let's say that somebody else is in your car and they, oh, here, I want to play my music. Okay, here, pair your phone. So that infotainment center could potentially have Ethan Chapin stuff, Hunter Chapin stuff, Maisie stuff, and then anybody who would have ever been in that car and who was ever plugged in and using things like it'll ask you, and it asks you so often to keep hitting stuff to share with the to share with the phone, to share with the car. I mean, it's insanity what it asks you and how often it asks you. Okay. That's when you can start getting like your text messages will pop up. And if they can do it on I was looking back in the stuff that like the Chevy lines and the Ford lines were doing in 2019. It was like, I know the capabilities of that 2022 Explorer. It's insane because of what they were able to do in 2018, 2019, and 2020. It's crazy. And I find it hard to believe that, well, let me walk this back. I have to go through now, and I'm going to be doing it because we're going to be doing a sick ass live together on December 31st. Me and I'm hosting over here Pavarotti on December 31st. We're going out with a fucking bang. Obviously, a lot of people have their opinions about this case. Okay. But what this live is going to show is that what is still in play and what isn't in play. Meaning, based off of the discovery that we have and it's been provided to us, what was in the hands of the FBI, what was in the hands of Moscow Police Department, and what was in the hands of Idaho State Police. Okay, and based off of all the information that we have to this point, what can you not eliminate? And there's huge bombs along the way that it's not to talk about. I'm not Brian Kober. He's not Brian Kober. We're not going to talk about why didn't Brian, why did you do this? Why do that? No. We're going to talk about this investigation. Investigations should organically flow. Investigations, when you have questions as an investigator, you have to go get that answered. And if we have all of these questions, trust me, these investigators would have those. And when you have 120 people, okay, a lot of people are doing a lot of things, but there's going to be a core group of like 10 that know what's going on. Okay. And based off of the answers that you're getting or that you're not getting, okay, you can't get to the next piece. You cannot put certain pieces together without certain pieces before. You have to get stuff in order to then continue on. Or you're just leaving like, you just don't, you can't get any further. It's like a fucking bridge, man. There's water there. You got to continue to build that bridge. Otherwise, you want to keep walking. You're going right into that fucking water. You're dying. You're falling. And here it was like, Ethan and Xana, where were they? Nobody fucking knows. Well, their phones would tell us where they're at. Why is nobody talking about their phones? When you hear interviews and the lead investigators are literally coming out after he pled guilty to 4 murders, okay, spending the rest of his life, they have nothing. They can't sit here and say, well, yeah, this is what we could glean from, Ethan's phone. This is what we could glean from Xana's phone. This is what we can glean from Kaylee's or Maddie's. Nothing. 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 It's unbelievable. So I find it hard to believe that they found nothing and had nothing from those phones, because I think that if they did have what they needed, they wouldn't have been taking no infotainment centers. Okay. To sit here and say that everybody was home by 2, okay, and in their rooms by 4. Why would you even make that statement? Well, because it's needed. Because we need that in order to get probable cause. We need all of these things in order to get probable cause. And all of it's lies. Like legit, all of it. There is not a single report in here that tells us that everybody was home by 2 and in their rooms by 4. Bethany didn't even say that. Dylan didn't even say that. Where the fuck are they getting that information from? Bethany went to bed. We always thought that Bethany went to bed, one of the last people to go to bed. Nope. The first. So much so that nobody asked Bethany or Dylan questions like, just to, hey, so you never saw Ethan or Xana, or, hey, who normally drives that Explorer? Why would Ethan have 2 cars here? Was that Explorer here when you left to go walk over the Sigma Chi party? Just that question right there would. How do you not? You guys are clearly interested in these infotainment centers, okay? Don't you think that you would have asked the 2 survivors where that vehicle was, and where it normally is, and where it normally is parked at throughout the weeks? No, why would we do that? I mean, I don't know. I went back and checked the interview that Blaker did with with Bethany. Hold on, I always want to read this though for you before I say this last part. I wanted to keep this right around 2 hours. Okay, perfect. Okay. Now this timeline. On December 22nd, one day before they will go and get the warrant for Brian Kohlberger's cell phone shit. On December 22nd. And now this report is written on December 22nd at 10:48 p.m. 10:48 p.m. This report is written. Report 88. He's saying that on 12/22/2022, Mowry never does anything like this, okay? But here we go. 12/22/2022. Mowry was tasked with reinstalling the exterior camera known as the light bulb camera at 1112 King Road to capture some comparison video and audio. I contacted one of the tenants, TL, who gave me permission to access her residence and conduct the recording. Upon arrival, I unplugged the power to the current router and removed the camera from the light bulb socket on the exterior of the residence. I then powered on the router I had secured from the residence earlier and installed the camera I secured as evidence earlier into the light socket. While installing the camera, I hear a crack and felt the light bulb base mount become loose. But he said become loose. It should be noted the approximate temperature outside while installing the camera was between 5 and 9 degrees. I previously had installed a new SD card into the camera and powered on the router and camera at the Moscow Police Department to ensure that the camera was functional. I then was able to monitor the camera using the Home Eye Pro app on my phone. Corporal Brett Payne was able to drive a white-colored vehicle into the view of the camera. Sergeant Dustin Blaker parked a vehicle. Okay, you guys, ready? How many vehicles did they use for this? Just curious. Because Brett Payne has one that is white-colored vehicle into the view of the camera. Sergeant Dustin Blaker parked a vehicle near the residence and closed the doors and trunk on a vehicle for audio comparison. A canine unit from Lewis County Sheriff's Office was utilized to capture barking audio comparison from the residence. Upon completion of the data collection, I powered off the evidentiary router and removed the camera from the light socket. In doing so, the base detached from the camera and a wire became disconnected. I gathered the router and camera, placed them back into their evidentiary bags, and returned them to the secure forensic lab. I reinstalled the current camera and reconnected the power to the new router. I contacted this girl to ensure that she could access her camera, and she responded in the affirmative. Corporal Brett Payne and I then ensured that the residence was locked and left the residence without further incident. Upon return to the Moscow Police Department, I was able to download the videos collected, and they were saved to the server located in the secure computer forensic lab. There is no report that the downloaded videos that were on this server somehow made it on a CD or a disc. Like, how was this ever given to Anne? Anyways, now I want you to ask yourselves, why the fuck did they do this on the 22nd? How does this... Okay, so they wanted to see, okay, just like we're doing right here. We hear noises, right? Yep, we hear noises. Well, we need to figure out what the fuck noises these are. Well, remember the other day, I was like, look in the front of you guys. You see how there's like a delay a little bit, but when people are walking or what they're doing with their cars and whatnot, you can tell. So here, there's video of this, of them doing this type of stuff. And the question is did they have two videos? Okay, meaning this. It would do no good. Like, you'd want to have the light bulb camera, okay? But then you would need to have a video on your person so that we see what you're doing, okay? And then it would tell the viewer, hey, that noise that you're hearing, because otherwise you would just be playing a guessing game again. So you would have it like, here, begin, here's a camera right here. I'm going to be parking, where are you parking this vehicle? Are you parking it in all different areas to then do close the door, open the door, shut the door, open the trunk, close the trunk. How about to the house? How about to go inside? How about to the slider? You cannot just do this from the light bulb camera. You need a camera on you, motherfucker. Okay? You need a camera on you. Otherwise, this is pointless. Okay? Absolutely pointless. Same thing with the dog. You need a camera on the dog to see where the dog's location is. Okay? And did you what part of the house? Where are you placing this dog? You'd be placing it all over. So I can't even breathe when I hear that you guys only fucking took. On December 22nd, 2022, I was tasked with reinstalling the exterior camera known as the light bulb camera at 1112 King Road to capture some comparison video and audio. I'm not going to trust you, and you're going to tell me where you were standing when you did this and what you did to make that noise. That's what you think? No fucking way. Why would you do that when you don't have to? You know, like, this is unbelievable. How about locking a car door? Unlocking a car door? How about getting a white Honda Elantra, same make, same model, same everything, getting it the fuck out there and using that actual vehicle to make these noises that you think is happening? We're just going to use any car. We're not even going to say what car we used. And but this is what was done on 11/22, and a report was written by Maury on, I'm sorry, not 11/22, but on 12/22. The day right before, they're like, we're going to go get Brian. Like, this is all about Brian Kober. Like, Brian Kober's already on the map, blah, 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 right? Unbelievable. And I'll tell you where Maury makes another problem. Oh, here. Lawrence Maury. On December 22nd, 2022, I applied for and was granted a warrant for financial records from Elon Financial Services for Kaylee Gonsalves. FBI Special Agent Douglas assisted in the services of this warrant. Okay. And it was for the purposes of to see if any financial transactions could be located showing evidence in her murder. This was wrote on 1/5/2023, but it was done on December 22nd. Okay. Now remind yourself this. Why all of a sudden is Maury beginning to shotgun search warrants on December 22nd? Well, because we need to make it seem like that we were doing all this other stuff and we were interested in all of these other things before we just totally focused our attention onto something that made no sense with the evidence that we truly had at that point. Okay. So on the 22nd, Maury's out fucking doing test runs, right? Doing search warrants, right? Well, here, 10 days before the December 22nd, December 12th, report 99, Lawrence Maury writes up this amazing report. He basically tells on himself. So on January 5th, he writes this up, but it's something that he did on December 12th. So think about that. You write a report on December 22nd, the day that you did it. Here, you do something on December 12th, but you don't write up this report till January 5th. On December 12th, 2022, I, Lawrence Mowry, applied for and was granted a warrant for sales records from Blue Ridge Knives for K-Bar USMC fighting style knife and sheath and known purchases and quantities of Blue Ridge knives from K-Bar, including on or about March 8th, 2022. And this is where I said to all of you guys back in the day, I said December 12th, he is talking about March 8th of 2022, the purchase of 360 units, and on or about June 24th, 2022, the purchases of 480 units. Blue Ridge Knives are also a wholesale for K-Bar knives and sheaths. FBI Special Agent Douglas assisted in the service of the warrant to Elon Financial. And I'm going to show you this to show you that this is absolutely craziness. You're just copy, cut, and pasting literally everything. Everything, because none of this makes any sense. How would you have that date? Why are you talking about March 8th? Here, take a look. Here's Hector. Give Hector a little bit of play here, and then we are out. We are over and out. Right there on December 12th, I applied for and was granted a warrant for sales records from Blue Ridge Knives for K-Bar. Look at what it says. FBI Special Agent Douglas assisted in the service of the warrant to, see right there, Elon Financial. Okay. He's writing this up on the January 5th, 2023. Well, there you go. This is why. Because just before that, Lawrence Mowry on January 5th, he wrote up on December 22nd, 2022, I applied for and was granted for this with this Elon services. Look at FBI Special Agent Douglas assisted in the service of the warrant. Dude, this is how lazy you are. They were picking and choosing what they were. This is just an any old order because this is report 98, and then here this is report 99. Unbelievable. Oopsies. December 12th. This was Bethany. And there you go. Bethany woke up at around 11 and noticed no one else in the house was up. What? What about Dylan? Bethany said that she knew this because Xana's Snapchat location was not on and it should have been. Do you guys understand that makes absolutely no sense? You guys, somebody's Snapchat location not being on, that does not and would never mean that nobody was awake in the house. Makes absolutely no sense. None. But again, this is the way he writes shit. And I say he, Blaker. But sometimes we tell on ourselves without telling on ourselves. And so this was kind of important for me when they want to talk about the Snapchat locations not being on. It's important because there was other people out there that were interviewed talking about the fact that Ethan, or Xana rather, that they couldn't find them through Snapchat. Also, 7 people were in that vehicle that went from Hungadunga Brewery to drop off Maisie, and then they went to the Sigma Chi party. And so after you get rid of Maisie, then you're down to 6. So it was Ethan, Hunter, Jack Katovich, his date, another kid and his date, and then Hunter Chapin's date, and then Ethan was Maisie's date. So, yeah. Where are those interviews with those people asking them about how they got to the Sigma Chi party, who was driving, where that vehicle, where was it parked? Not a single person asked that question about how they got anywhere. That's located in the Moscow Police Department or the Idaho State Police's reports. Now, if any of that stuff is in Federal Bureau of Investigation reports, sure, would love to see that, but it's very interesting. We will be back tomorrow. Again, mark down your calendars. Thank you guys for joining. B is for Becca. So excited to have the best bag. Oh, yes, we had a blessed Christmas. It was great. Hope you guys had a great Christmas. Merry Christmas. Inside Your Bones. What a name. Beautifully broken woman. Any hole is a goal. What? That's great. Mama J, what's good? Back to back. Good vibes only. Thank you. Lori, welcome. Lori, welcome. Bemi Rose, welcome. $5 super sticker, thank you. And Christine Hurd, oh boy. So yeah. Wow. Lots to think about. Anyways, 429, it is the black SUV in my opinion, and I would be making a push to talk about if there is any chance that when you shake it up and look at it that way, who's in the SUV. Somebody just happened to, again, on the night that people were murdered just a couple minutes ago, drive back the SUV, park it there, and we're like, hey buddy, I just was bored, so I drove your SUV and parked it in the parking lot for you, left the keys in the car, and yeah. Makes no sense. But sometimes there are crazy things that happen, but you mix that in with Hunter Chapin not having his cell phone the next morning, something's wrong with it, never gets downloaded, and if it does, I don't know when, we don't know who does that. he goes to bed at 10. His sister goes to bed at 10, but everybody was texting her to come to the party. Hunter Chapin, the last time that he sees his brother and Xana was at 9 in his apartment. But then when he leaves and comes back at 9:15, they're gone. Yeah. All right, guys. See you on the next one. Thank you, moderators. Appreciate you guys.